In this video, we're going to have a look at connecting a USB 3.0 device, in this case a thumb drive, a USB key, an 8 gig USB device that is hooked up to my laptop. My laptop is then using the vSphere client to connect to my ESXi host. All right, so I'm booting Windows Server 2012. How are we going to get a USB key attached to this virtual machine? Well, the thing is, we can't unless we use the vSphere web client. So this whole thing about adding client devices on my laptop over IP to a remote VM, just not going to happen through this interface. So I just want to start by politely pointing that out. Another thing to point out is if we look at Device Manager by hitting Windows plus X and click on Device Manager, you'll see there's nothing special here. There's no USB controller. If we look at the settings of the VM, no USB controller. All right. And virtual machine version 8, we're going to have to fix that. So let's minimize this vSphere client and just give the vSphere web client a go. I have a separate article about how I configure this web client so it doesn't really look like a browser. In my case, it's actually Chrome running under the hood. Okay, so we fire up Chrome, it points to the vCenter server, and now we're logging in. Now I am rusty on this because it's slow and I don't tend to use it as much as the vSphere client, the 32-bit Windows client. But I'll be fine. We'll poke our way around, and if you're used to kind of a tree view, I tend to just go right over here and get a list of VMs, and here they go. All right, a lot of VMs, right? But if we type in essentials, or the beginning of the word essentials, oh, there's a mark. How about just Windows VMs? Oh, that's interesting. All right, well, how about by sorting by status in the powered on VMs? So jumping to the top of the list should be the few that I have powered up. And here we have one. Notice it's called testbed. So we're now in the right VM. We have a few things to do. One is we don't have a prayer of getting very far with it until we go to the VM version 9 hardware. Okay, so now we've got a window opened to that VM. So we have a console going. That's good. And we're going to leave that going. Let's make the vSphere client run on the left here. Boy, recording full HD really helps in this circumstance. All right, I'm going to move that over even more. So we want to keep an eye on Device Manager as we're going to take care of tweaking this VM so we can get USB 3.0 support working in it. How are we going to do that? Well, let's first have a look. Watch what happens when we right-click on the VM. We still have an Edit Settings menu. But it's a little richer than before. It's got more stuff in there than the Windows 32-bit binary. Okay. So just having a look at the tabs here. All sorts of options you might not be used to in new places. Synchronize guest time with host. I usually leave that on. This is just a test bed. I'll leave it alone. We didn't make any changes, nothing important there. All right, so you can see there's a whole lot in there. I certainly don't have Fiber Channel, and I don't really care about these other tabs for our purposes. But I do care about the Virtual Hardware tab, right? So, Virtual Hardware tab, what are our options? Well, let's open that section up. Virtual machines with this compatibility, VM version 9 provide the best performance. So, let's go for it. Next reboot. Okay. Done. It says work in progress, reconfiguring virtual machine. Done. Over here on the right, we're watching the screen here, and nothing happens. So let's queue that up for the next reboot. So we should be able to hit Windows. Didn't really mean to launch that. It's just the dashboard. All right. So we've queued up for the next reboot. Now we can hit Windows plus C. Sorry, Windows plus C in the remote machine. No, that's not going to just move the mouse to the corner. That'll work. Click here, click here. Okay, let's restart that. So now we're going to get the version 9 hardware that that VM needs as a prerequisite. Well, that's booting. Okay, you've got this summary screen here. This particular VM is using 6 gig of RAM. My ESXi host is a little bit on its knees. I probably ought to take care of that. Yeah, we can see we got some memory pressure going on. Pretty much tapped out. So I should shut off some VMs I'm not actually using. Thank you, SolarWinds. I like that little utility for at a glance look at what's going on. Okay. All right, what's next? Well, once this thing comes up, we'll see the new hardware. Well, not really, because the plug-and-play dance happens as it boots. But you will see VM version 9 is showing. So the upgrade has succeeded, and it says right there, upgrade succeeded. That's good. And we're in. And we'll hit Windows plus X. We hit Device Manager. Have a look around. We don't really see anything different, right? Okay, what else is next? Well, there's more. So head on back to the vSphere web client. And we want to edit settings for the VM again. Now that we've gone to VM hardware version 9, we're going to have some USB options that simply are not there if you forget to do that step. Kind of ran into that the hard way. I should have read my own guide here. Here's the article, tinkertry.com. There's the URL. And here's the title of the article you want to look for. ESXi 5.1 has USB 3.0 support, sort of. And the article is all about how you attach a client laptop, say, its USB 3 device to a VM. Okay, so let's get going with adding a new device. So we need to add a USB controller. And we don't like the one it picked. We want a USB 3.0 compatible controller. And click OK. If we look over here on the right, we should see some things happening, and there it goes. So we now have an XHCI driver. That worked. Next, probably could have done this in one step. Now that the controller is added, the operating system is capable of seeing a USB 3.0 device. We now need to mount that USB 3.0 device basically over IP address. So what are our other options here? Well, it's not going to be in there because don't think I looked hard enough. Hang on a second. There it is. USB devices, right? I'm supposed to click on this. And isn't this pretty cool? All right, how do we know which of these devices in my laptop locally is the right device? Well, let's do a couple things here. First, let's get a view of my file system, just to get our bearings here. All right, so we've got an 8 gig USB key, and there it is. We can look at that 8 gig USB key's properties. It happens to have Ubuntu on it. We're about to nuke it. We can look at hardware and see that JetFlash Transcend is the one we want. So that answers that question. Too bad it doesn't show on the list. So now I'm going to hit Windows X on my local machine, bring up Device Manager on my local system here, and let's dive in and see if we can find out a little more about this thing. So I happen to have picked a device that doesn't say much about itself. Generic disk, JetDisk, Transcend. Okay, I would say a different way, whoops, cancel. So we're going to do this a different way. We're going to look at that list. Okay, now I'm going to eject the drive from my local machine. It's now been ejected. I'm going to hit F5 in the browser to get that screen to repaint. That didn't work actually. So what I'm kind of expecting here, let me just go to somewhere else and go back. Okay, so we're getting it to repaint this screen. Presumably this drop-down menu gets repainted too. So it's not looking too good. It looks kind of like it's not presenting USB 3.0 devices for my local machine. But if I try the same USB 3.0 key in a USB 2.0 slot? Okay, it's plugged in. And we can still see Ubuntu now. It's there. Again, if we look at its properties, look at the hardware tab, it's still called a JetFlash Transcend. So one would think it should show up here. So that bottom mass storage device is most likely it. Pull it out. You heard the tone. Strange that the tone didn't make that noise before putting it in. And now it did disappear. So the bottom mass storage device is the one. Go back to plugging it in on USB 3.0 this time around for speed. And there it is. All right. So it can be a little tricky to figure out what device you want to map to a VM. There's got to be a better way, but here we go. Device Manager over on the right is now seeing it. We can see it do the plug-and-play dance briefly there. And we're up. We now have the Ubuntu CD, or excuse me, bootable image available in the VM. So that was kind of roundabout and a little bit complex to show, but we've reached our goal. That's what I wanted to do. What's a practical reason you'd want a USB 3.0 device mapped? Well, I'm going to show you a very good one. And here it goes. So you've got this VM here, and it has access to a drive letter now. So if we run the dashboard on Windows Server 2012 Essentials, it has a boot recovery USB key creation utility. Kind of a mouthful. Let me see the wording that Microsoft uses. Customized computer backup and file history. So notice I clicked on the Windows Server 2012 Essentials dashboard. I then clicked on Devices. I then am about to click on Customize Computer Backup. Head on over to the Tools tab, and we have this nice little Create Key button. If we read the help screen, and we allow our browser to do stuff on the web, which is not advised. Again, this is my test bed to learn on. it basically tells us we can create a USB key using this utility. We have to have 1 gig of space or larger. I got an 8 gigger, so no problem there. And USB 3.0 speeds now. So kind of done with all those other windows. Ready to just create the key. Insert. There's only one device in the drop-down menu. It's eligible. And it's going to nuke what's on there. And there it goes. We're now creating a USB key over IP. And I'm getting a nice little blinking light showing activity, convincing me that something's actually going on. That's kind of cool. And speed. This is a great chance to use Task Manager. Let's check it out. What kind of impact on Ethernet is this having? Nothing, right? The VM is not going to see it. ESXi host, however, will see it. So let's head on back to the Windows client, where apparently I had another window going the whole time. And let's just look at performance. Real time. And we should see a little bit of something going on. Network packets. All right, just not a big deal. So that VM is transferring data, it's making a USB key. See how long it takes. Probably a better approach and even easier is just run Task Manager on my local machine. Now we're looking at Windows 8 on the laptop. And clearly my Ethernet's doing something. 70 megabits per second is the speed I'm getting as it tries to build that USB 3.0 key. And that key's going to be stuffed full of 1 gig of data. Another thing we look at while it's cloning, well, it finished. Nice. And if we look at my local bar graph here, it's going to drop to 0 here. And there you go. We're done. Nice. So we've created a drive. If we look at that drive, it no longer shows Ubuntu on there. Here's the files in there. Nice. I've got some device drivers I need to throw in there for particular laptops I own. Let's check out the properties of this drive, this USB 3.0 drive, and click on Hardware. And what do you know? Transcend drive is passed right through to it. We never did quite figure out what the real name of that thing is or what it should look like, but here it just says on USB mass storage. So I don't know. I got to think about that. There's probably a better way, but you know, I'm plugging it and plugging it back in. It worked pretty well. It just seems like somewhere in here that actual name must exist somewhere, but I just don't quite know where. Okay, so that all worked pretty well. I now have a USB key I can use to boot like netbooks or newer ultra-thin ultrabooks with no removable hard drives and no Ethernet. I'm going to use a USB 3.02 gigabit adapter, and I'm going to put that driver right on this USB key. But really, the scope of this video was to show how to use USB 3.0 in a very practical way. I believe I've done that. And I think we also demonstrated some decent speed. But I really can't resist trying that out now. So I'm going to move the benchmark utility over to local drive. And I'm going to run it. And I'm going to go against drive F, which is missing. Hang on a second. Get that wrong. Drive E is what it became. Okay, so drive E, do a little quick benchmark. We can close down this user interface. We're done with it. And just for grins, okay, I'm looking at another window. The health of my ESXi host is fine. There are a lot of VMs running and memories under a little pressure, but nothing's really doing anything right now. It's all idle. So it's as good a time as any to do a benchmark. Close this task manager. So basically nothing's running but VMware tools at this point. as we let this benchmark do its thing on the E drive. Glancing over my shoulder at the USB key, yeah, it's blinking, and it's slow. So, probably better ways to do this. Let's have a look. I'm searching on my own website here and see how I do. We're ready to disconnect the device. So watch this. Try to eject it from the hardware wizard here. See what happens. Okay, it's now safe to remove. So there's no on-screen eject button that I can see, but now that I've removed it logically, that there was no blinking lights on it, the thing's gone. I heard a tone. I plug it back in. It's complaining over here it failed to connect. So yeah, I guess that wasn't the right way to eject it. And we're going to now try to move the device back and forth once more. Mass storage device. Heard the tone. Comes right up. There's the device. Eject the device the good old-fashioned proper Windows way. No tone, because I have no sound support there. But that's my connect button. Yeah, where's my disconnect button? That's the issue here. So, instead of F5, let's use the refresh button. See if we get it to do something. Now we're talking. It worked. Bingo. And it moved right back to here. Recovery disk showed up again. So it works. We can go back and forth. And now successfully I managed to show how to do it. The key step was to click refresh to get it to paint the screen again because it just wasn't showing. I waited quite a while, that last one. Okay, there you have it.